LDM Radio Sports Talk, the sports show that talks about sports and other topics relatable to sports fans. Joining me, as always, is my co-host, Harris Berger.
What's up, everybody?
And we are going to get rolling with the NFL. So we have our two Super Bowl combatants facing off in about 10 days. Before that, let's break down the games and thoughts and views on the championship Sunday that happened this past week. So in the first game, the Tom Brady-led Tampa Bay Buccaneers beat the Green Bay Packers 31-26. Thoughts on the game?
Tom Brady's going to his 10th Super Bowl. Is there anything left to be said? 18% of every Super Bowl ever has had Tom Brady in it. Yeah. Tom Brady has every third Super Bowl Tom Brady's been in. There's never been 3 Super Bowls that have occurred sequentially throughout Tom Brady's career that he has not been a part of. This is the greatest quarterback of all time. It's not even close at this point. He showed it. I mean, look, and people will make the argument in this game that Green Bay lost this game, right? Aaron Rodgers, probably the MVP of the league, didn't have a great game. You had the bad fourth and goal call with a couple minutes left, down 8 points. The pass interference call late in the game. It's a tough situation, but Tom Brady did what Tom Brady needed to do. The Bucs defense held the best offense in the league to 26 points and held them out of the end zone when they needed to. And the Bucs are going back when nobody thought they would. Everybody just assumed it was going to be Green Bay.
Including us. We picked the games. We both lost that one. We both ended up winning the second game, which for my playoff picking has been 500 the whole way. So that was my par. You took a little bit of a hit because you were
when you get 2
there.
games and the MVP's playing in one, shame on me for not riding with my boy Tom. I'll tell you what, I'm not going to make that mistake twice. That's for sure.
The going back to the Brady point, I think that a lot of people pretty much can squash he's a system quarterback.
I think that went out the window before this game. I think what he did in the throughout the entire playoffs just showed what he could do as a quarterback.
Yeah, I think as much as I haven't liked Tom Brady throughout his career, being a Jets fan and having to see him twice and mostly losing all those games, I'd say that he's definitely one of the greatest players ever, if not the greatest. Even though with the whole cheating scandal and things like that, he's done it enough times where he's just you just call him great. You know?
Yeah, I mean, people bring up some of the issues off the field and some of the sanctions that the NFL has thrown against him. I think that all goes out the window when you make it to 7 Super Bowls. When you make it to 10 Super Bowls. If he wins a 7th one, he'll have more championships than any franchise ever.
Yeah.
Important to note, Tom Brady now has the same amount of NFC championships as Aaron Rodgers and Drew Brees, and this was his first year in the NFC.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming. This is also he's the second quarterback in the last 50 years to go to the Super Bowl in both the AFC and the NFC. So that's a nice little stat there. I mean, look, the Bucs had so many weapons, and that was one of the reasons why Tom Brady went to Tampa this year. And the expectations went through the roof when he signed there. They went from being a 7-9 team last year to frankly, their 7 team made the playoffs and now they're going to the Super Bowl. But as soon as Tom Brady signed there, they went to a Super Bowl favorite, and now they're in the Super Bowl. And we have the GOAT versus who some people are labeling him as the GOAT already, and he's only 4 years into his career.
Yeah.
We got to see, but I mean, Patrick Mahomes is certainly a player.
Yeah, we'll get to him in a second, but the gauntlet that Tom Brady had to go through, he goes through. The Bears were the Bears, so that was pretty much a layup.
Well, they didn't beat the Bears. The Saints beat the Bears.
Who'd they beat?
Washington.
Right. So Washington was Washington, and they just
Washington won the NFC East.
That was, it was a roll up. It was a
Washington
layup.
won the NFC East.
Yeah.
They were a division champion. Remember, they did this on the road. Not only did Tom Brady run through the gauntlet in the NFC, but they did it on the road as a wild card team. Not many times in Tom's career has he been a wild card team to make it to the Super Bowl. In fact, every Super Bowl, I believe, except for one that Tom Brady's been to, they won the division, so they got a first round bye.
I think without the packed stadiums, I don't think the home field was really that big of a deal. Maybe
I think playing in freezing cold Lambeau Field last week had to do with something.
That's a part. Like it's a small part of it, but it's not like he's never been there before. A lot of the players that Tampa Bay's been on, it's not like they never played in cold weather before, even though they're home team.
No, most of those guys are from the South. They don't play in the cold.
Nah, I don't know about that. But
Devin White, LSU. Antonio Brown, Central Michigan, fine. He didn't even play.
That's another former thing. Steelers.
No, but I'm saying a lot of those guys are from the South.
No, they're from the South, but
and a lot of those guys are homegrown talent in Tampa. But Mike Evans from Texas.
Okay, but I'm saying they've had long NFL careers, most of them, and they've all played in cold weather before.
Dude.
Yeah, I mean they
except
pretty much picked
except for Tom and Gronk.
They pretty much picked and chose an all-star lineup almost of former players.
Yeah, they really did. They built a fantastic team down there, and that's why Tom went there. And he went there because they had all those weapons, the defense. But the story of that team has been their defense. You could talk about all the weapons: Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Scotty Miller, Leonard Fournette, all those guys that were ring chasing with Tom Brady. But you got to talk about that defense and how good, especially earlier in the year when they beat the Packers 38-10 in Green Bay already once this year. So they put up a lot of points again. So yeah, the offense was good, but that defense picked off Aaron Rodgers again. Yeah, I know it was probably holding or pass interference and it wasn't called. But other than that, that defense was really, they were all over Aaron Rodgers, that front seven. That Green Bay offensive line could not hold that Bucs front seven at all. And they got after him a lot. And that really speaks to what that team was, in that the strength of that team is their defense.
Well, yeah, I mean, Tom Brady also had 3 interceptions in the game. So
yeah, exactly.
Like
that's why I said it from the beginning that Green Bay might, you would probably make the argument that Green Bay lost that game more so than the Bucs won that game, because you had, I think they only got 3 points off of those 3 interceptions. So that, I mean, that's that's not Packers football. This whole year, one of their big MOs was scoring points off turnovers. Mike Pettin, the defensive coordinator in Green Bay, probably deserves to lose his job after that game. That last heave at the end of the half, inexcusable. That play call was just awful. That you left that corner out on an island. Yeah, he probably should have given Scotty Miller a little more respect and space in order to keep him in front of him. But that you can't call that play just one-on-ones all the way around on the last play of the game when Tom Brady's on the bench with a parka on, ready to just pack it in for the half. Yeah. And you give him the opportunity to go out there and get it done, and he did. And that really felt like the game was over at that point.
Well, I think it goes back to what we talked about last week with the young coaches and the time management. Time management seems to be the downfall of every young head coach, it seems.
I think it's just lack of reps.
It seems
right?
like everybody's followed football all their lives, and you would think that they would know every kind of time situation. The announcers always say it, but at the end of the day, it comes down to the decisions of what the head coaches do, and a lot of times they get burned on the time management.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about that 4th down call at the end of the game. I mean, that.
Yeah, it's bad decisions. And
yeah, I mean, you have the MVP of the league, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. You put the ball in his hands, especially when 3 points does nothing for you at that point. They decide to kick a field goal with 2 minutes left. I guess it was a little over 2 minutes left. You were down 8. You kick a field goal, and I guess he thinks you're going to get a stop and then get the ball back. Realistically, they had 4 timeouts with a 2-minute warning. Why kick the field goal there? I don't understand at that point, because 3 points does nothing for you. You still need to get the ball back and score a touchdown. Where if you go for it on 4th and 8, on 4th and goal from the 8-yard line, and you still miss and you don't get it, then they're on the 8. They're on their own 8-yard line, and you can still get a stop and then have better field position rather than kick the ball off, get a touchback, and now they got the ball at their 25-yard line. And then they still didn't get the stop. Granted, you had that pass that call. I don't care what people say. That was pass interference at the end of that game. There was a blatant tug on that jersey. That is textbook pass interference, regardless of how the rest of the game was called. That is the call you have to make in that moment. It's just tough that the rest of the game wasn't called consistently.
Yeah.
But the thinking there, it just didn't make sense. And I guess maybe Matt LaFleur, young coach, the analytics, what a lot of these coaches deal with now, the analytics say kick a field goal. But when you have Aaron Rodgers on one side on your team, and then you have the greatest quarterback ever on the other side, you don't put the ball back in his hands.
Yeah.
Because he's going to pick you apart and take advantage of you, and that's exactly what they did.
Yeah, and if that happens in the first quarter, it's possible that they can overcome it. But at the end of the game, it's just the timing of it, time management.
Well, that was one of the other things too. Green Bay had the most proficient red zone offense in the league. They scored on 80% of their trips to scored touchdowns on 80% of their trips to the red zone. The Bucks made them kick field goals twice in the red zone. Yeah. First time all season that happened to the Packers, and it cost them the game for sure. I mean, and then they had a couple other issues, but the defense for Green Bay was a story for me also. They just did not show up the way that's back-to-back NFC championships where I think the defense failed Aaron Rodgers more than anybody else. And people need to remember that the Packers traded up in the first round to draft a quarterback after last year's NFC championship embarrassment to San Francisco. Yeah. And instead of getting a Patrick Queen who had a great year in Baltimore, instead of trading up to get a linebacker, a corner, somebody to help that defense out, they didn't do that. They trade up, they draft a quarterback, and the quarterback they drafted didn't dress a single game this year. He was a healthy scratch every single game this season. Aaron Rodgers had an MVP season, and now what? Because does Aaron Rodgers want out of Green Bay? Do they want Aaron in Green Bay? Aaron Rodgers isn't going anywhere. He's not retiring. But is he going to leave Green Bay, or is he going to request a trade? Well, I have no idea.
Very interesting to see how that unfolds. So we'll move on to the AFC portion of Championship Sunday, where the Buffalo Bills went to Kansas City, and the Kansas City Chiefs won 38-24.
Boy, this game looked interesting early, didn't it? But in a blink of an eye, Buffalo was up 9-0.
9-zip, yep.
And then you kind of looked over. Everyone was like, wow, are the Bills actually going to do this? I got excited because I picked the Bills in that game. Or I wanted to pick the Bills. I ended up picking the Chiefs. My heart wanted the Bills to win. I said the Bills were going to win. We're going to be the team to beat the Chiefs, and unfortunately it didn't work that way. But
also with the question mark of Mahomes coming off of last week.
Yeah, exactly. You had the Mahomes concussion question, the turf toe question. How is he going to look? And he looked like an MVP again. He looked like nothing bothered him one bit. But when you looked over, the one thing that I've seen highlights of, McCole Hardman dropped that punt that ultimately led to the Bills going up 9-0, and he came back to the sidelines all upset. And all of his teammates, Kelsey, Mahomes, all came over and said, "Hey, shake it off. You got a lot of big plays to make." And he was the one that scored the first touchdown for the Chiefs. And it was very interesting. He was big part of that offense with so many weapons. He was the biggest part of that offense, probably, aside from Kelsey. Kelsey and Tyreek Hill both set AFC Championship game records for receptions and yards, respectively. But, boy, when they went down 9-0, you kind of looked over at that sideline, and Mahomes looked like, okay, now we can go. And it's like, all right, we gave them their head start, and now we're going to go. And they turned it on, and we're up 21-9 in, like, 5 minutes after that. So the Chiefs are the Chiefs. Like the Browns were the Browns, the Chiefs are the Chiefs, and they're going to continue to roll all the way into Tampa.
Yes. It was interesting to see how Patrick Mahomes was able to bounce back after last week. That was the big question mark. That was, you never really knew what was going to happen, but he ends up responding, having a great game, and the Chiefs did what the Chiefs do, and so basically it sets up the matchup of Patrick Mahomes versus Tom Brady again. Usually this is before the Super Bowl, and now it's actually the Super Bowl matchup. I think maybe the best storyline for a hardcore NFL fan would have been the Buffalo Bills having to beat Tom Brady in order to get their first Super Bowl.
But this is the matchup the league wanted.
But this is this is an amazing matchup where you have basically the GOAT versus the next GOAT. And it's gonna be a fantastic game. It's gonna be high ratings, I'm sure, and it's definitely not gonna be boring. That's for sure.
The AFC and the NFC championship games had the highest NFL ratings in 20 years, I think they said. Yeah. For championship weekend, as high as they were. This game first of all, it's the first time in Super Bowl history that a team has home field advantage in the Super Bowl. The Bucs are going to get to play that game in Tampa.
Yeah.
In their white jerseys was announced today. Tom Brady's a big fan of that. He likes to wear his white jersey in the Super Bowl. All the Super Bowls Tom's won, they've been wearing white, except for one. So
Well, he's been so many, can't be a perfect match.
yeah, but the ones they've worn blue, he hasn't won. I think all the times the 2 times against the Giants and the 1 time against the Eagles, he was wearing blue. So that's something to note, something worth noting on that. So he likes to wear white. They're wearing white in the Super Bowl. They're at home, which I mean, you get to sleep in your own bed the night before the Super Bowl. How awesome is that?
Yeah.
You know. And first of all, these players are in a great situation because you don't have to deal with the media this week. Normally the Super Bowl is a circus for media all week long. They probably don't have to do that a whole heck of a lot, and they get to stay at home. The Chiefs have to travel to Tampa in the warm weather. We'll see how they react to that. But we'll see. I like Tampa in this matchup right now. I mean, the Chiefs, like we said, the Chiefs are the Chiefs, but Tampa is, I mean, it's Tom Brady. You can't bet against Tom Brady in the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Next week
we'll get into that breakdown next week for sure.
Yeah, we'll have full breakdowns and full predictions. We got a week to kill, so we'll just skip on that for now.
We'll talk about some prop bets. We'll talk about some matchups to watch. We'll have a good breakdown for the Super Bowl next week.
Totally. So we're gonna move on to the NHL. So the NHL they have a modified 56-game season this year, and right now we are, I'd say, we're still in the beginning stages of it.
We're
Most
about
teams,
3 weeks in.
Yeah, most teams have about 7 or 8 games, except for a select few. And we have 2 undefeated teams, granted at only 3-0 because of COVID issues, but the Florida Panthers and Dallas Stars, who are in the same division, they are both 3-0-0.
Yeah. And the Stars look good. Boy, do the Stars look good. After that COVID rest they had, the Stars come out and what they win 7-1 on night or 7-0 on night 1. So or at least night 1 for them, and then they won again like 4-1 the next night, and it was Nashville couldn't get out of Dallas fast enough. That's for sure.
Which in their respective division, that does well for them because they're not in a very strong division. So the more they can just pound on teams, the better they'll basically try to make it out of the division.
Yep.
So then we have there are 4 teams, the aforementioned Florida and Dallas, and then we have the Montreal Canadiens and the Washington Capitals joining them as teams that have not lost in regulation.
Yeah.
The Canadiens are 4-0-2, and the Washington Capitals are 4-0-3.
Yeah, Washington's looked. Everyone expected this from Washington, probably. I mean, that lineup is a superpower lineup with arguably the second or third best player in the league, followed by guys like Nick Backstrom. You had Zdeno Chara back there. You have Tom Wilson, T.J. Oshie. That team's ridiculous. What people didn't expect was Montreal and how good Montreal's been.
Yeah.
And it's their young guys that are leading the way for that team. With their veteran presence, they added Corey Perry in the offseason.
And Tyler Toffoli?
Tyler Toffoli's relatively young. I mean, yeah, he's probably in the middle of his career as far as how long careers are for hockey, but the guy's 26 years old.
But he has Stanley Cup experience, too.
Absolutely. You bring Stanley Cup winning pedigree to that lineup, but you have the guys Brendan Gallagher, Nick Suzuki, Romanov. Those guys are really leading the way for that team and offensively. And then you have the best goalie in the world in Carey Price.
Stalwart.
Yeah, that has just been – he deserves one. I hate Montreal, and I hope they don't win one, but Carey Price deserves one.
Well, a lot of people have widely have said that Carey Price is overrated and he doesn't have it anymore.
That's because he plays for Montreal.
Yeah.
That's why. If you put Carey Price on any other team, they'll probably come close. Or any other pretty good team. Because Montreal's had some good teams over the years that he's been there. But they just never do it for him.
Yeah.
And you put him on some of those other teams, they win Stanley Cups. He is the best goalie in the world for sure.
So we're moving on
We want to talk about that trade?
Which one?
The Pierre-Luc Dubois trade?
Yeah, let's do it.
I don't think we brought that up last week. I think it happened shortly after we came off air, actually. I think it happened Friday last week, right?
Well, we were talking about destinations, and you were saying how the Rangers would be a good fit for him, and I was saying that the Rangers are too young of a team to really need that. But
Yep. So
go right
Pierre-Luc
ahead.
Dubois gets traded to the Winnipeg Jets for Patrick Laine and Jake Roslovic. Pierre-Luc Dubois was the 3rd overall pick in that draft. Laine was the 2nd overall pick in the same draft. So they get flip-flop for one another. Dubois got his wish, got out of Columbus, like we had mentioned. Interesting spotting. Maybe he's a little bit happier where he is. His dad is an assistant coach within the Winnipeg organization. He's an assistant coach in Manitoba for the Moose. So he gets to go and play with Mark Scheifele, play with Blake Wheeler. So he joins a pretty good lineup there. But the return, Jake Roslovic is a Columbus native.
Yeah.
Refused to sign a contract in Winnipeg. He did not want to be there. As soon as he gets traded to Columbus, signed a 2-year deal with a $3 million AAV, I believe. I mean, you got to be pumped playing in your hometown. I know that's one of the things. I've had some buddies that have been lucky enough to play for their hometown teams, or been drafted by their hometown teams, and be able to play in the building you grew up watching hockey in.
Yeah, certainly
It's
the
gotta be
odds.
pretty cool.
The odds in that are not very favorable. So it is nice when it works out that
Yeah,
way.
exactly. It's going to be interesting though. Laine wanted out of Winnipeg for whatever reason. They haven't really been disclosed yet. Is Columbus really a spot that he might thrive? I feel like you went from the Columbus of Canada to the Winnipeg of the U.S. So I don't really know what the difference is for Laine. Maybe he'll just go play out his contract and go somewhere else. But he got out of there. It'll be interesting to see how he kind of reacts to the way Torts coaches. John Tortorella certainly has his own style of coaching, and whether or not that really speaks to Patrick Laine's personality remains to be seen.
Yeah, I don't see Patrick Laine really going and blocking shots.
Yeah, I don't know. He doesn't really play that. Yeah, he
Or
doesn't
even
play that
defensively at
gritty.
all,
He
yeah.
doesn't play that gritty sandpaper game. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how the two of them butt heads, or if they create music together. He might fit in great in that lineup and be a great second line center for that team. So we'll see. But that was a big blockbuster trade to start the year out.
Well, I think in Columbus's what they have going for him is possibly if Patrick Laine could come in and he could show some more value, like they could also flip him before the deadline and try to get some more assets, because they lost a dearth of assets going for it 2 years ago when they kept pending free agents, Bobrovsky, the goaltender, and Artemi Panarin. Then they end up losing them in free agency, and they went for it, and they got Matt Duchene, and they got Denzigel?
Oh, Ryan Dzingel.
Yeah, Ryan Dzingel.
Yeah.
So they gave up pretty much their whole draft
Yeah, you're right.
for that year to go for it. They won one playoff round,
So
which
maybe
is
they'll
the first
flip him
time ever.
for some more draft
Yeah,
capital.
so basically, if that would be I would say a move for the future where they can try to capitalize on that. So the story, the trade tree, on this point might not be totally complete.
Yeah.
But definitely interesting though, because you just trade two malcontents for each other. The chances of it working out for both teams is not very good. One side's going to win, the other side's going to lose. That seems to be
Yeah,
the
we'll
way
see.
the way
I know
these
that
trades work.
people, when I was reading up on this, a lot of people brought up the PK Subban and Shea Weber trade, and first reaction was, oh, the Preds got away with murder trading to get Subban.
Yeah.
Well, now we're starting to see that, well, maybe the Shea Weber side of that deal was a little better, worked out a little bit better for Montreal. So this one might be a couple years down the road. We'll kind of see how it works out, whether the two of them continue to develop. I don't know that Laine has really not come into his form yet, I don't think, in the league. He's very streaky. When he's hot, he's one of the best players in the league. But when he's cold, he really, you don't see him. So he disappears for a little while, and that's something he's got to figure out. And Pierre-Luc Dubois figured it out towards – he really had a coming-out party in the playoffs last year, I think, in the bubble. And solidified himself as one of the better centers in the league. But I don't know if he's really hit that elite level yet that he probably can reach. So we'll see if playing with Mark Scheifele, playing with Kyle Connor, some of those guys up in Winnipeg might bring that out of him.
Yeah, certainly their forward core is very studly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So definitely should be able to bring them. It would be the best wingers that he's ever played with at that point. So
Yep.
That we'll see what his full potential will be. So staying on the Central Division. So this one's a little weird to figure out in the early going because right now we have Nashville as the division leader, and then the Blackhawks are actually second in the division. But 4 teams have played 4 or less games.
Yeah, well, when you have 2 of the teams have COVID issues,
Yeah.
you're gonna run into some problems, right? When they have games postponed and schedules moved around. So you had Dallas start the year with some issues. Then I believe Carolina had some issues, which then caused Tampa to lose games on both playing against Carolina and Dallas. So I think this will kind of shake down the way you and I both predicted this division to kind of shake down. I think the Lightning will be there at the end of the day, and I don't think anyone's going to really worry about it. Yeah. It's just a question of teams staying healthy and staying COVID-free. That's all.
Yeah, and then this looks like coincidentally the NL Central of the baseball season, which was like hammered with COVID issues the whole way through. Even though now this morning the Vegas Golden Knights and the St. Louis Blues were supposed to face off today, but now they've been postponed because of COVID issues. So now it's starting to get a little less there. But then we'll move on to the both agreed upon power division, the East Division.
Yeah.
Right now, Washington's in the lead with 9 points, and then we have Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and Boston having 9 points.
Boston's ahead of those guys based off of games played, by the way.
Okay,
You got that.
that's fair.
Don't slight my boys there.
It's all right. Well, I mean, so and then locally, we have a race.
Boy, locally.
Yeah, we have a race for the bottom. We have the Devils with 7 points, the New York Islanders with 6 points, and the New York Rangers have only 1 win and 3 points. They are 1-4-1.
Yep, the Rangers so far. Our bet is not looking too good for you, pal.
Nope.
The Bruins are 4-1-1. The Rangers are 1-4-1. Since we last spoke, we had a good discussion last week about Alex Lafreniere and his development. Since our last conversation last week, still no points.
Still no points.
Has not found the score sheet yet for the Rangers. And you really can see they're having scoring issues for sure. And it's blatant. It's not like, oh, some nights they score, sometimes they don't. They had the one explosion against the Islanders for their 1 win of the season, and that's it.
Which was on my birthday, so I was happy about that.
Yeah, hey,
that worked.
Happy birthday to you. Now it's basically a drought, and you could see Mika doesn't look 100%. Panarin really hasn't found his form like he did early last season when he went on that run to that race for the Art Ross Trophy. So the Rangers really have to figure it out.
I'll say the one thing they have going for them is they're losing by 1 goal.
Yeah, but it still goes in the L column.
You're right, but I mean, I think I've always said that this is like the transitional year. I think next year, once they have the dead money to play around with, and they can make some solid additions, they'll be able to take off. But that being said, they look a little lost out there.
Right.
It's not exactly the.
They made Buffalo look like the Harlem Globetrotters with some of the plays they made against them the other night.
And they meet again tonight, those 2 teams in Buffalo.
Yep.
But it's just the one thing you were pretty much going to count on was the goaltending and offense.
And
everything else
really hasn't been there.
Yeah, so it's just it's been a bit of a struggle.
And I know that you got Georgiev and Shesterkin. They're 2 young guys, but when you shipped Hank out of town, it was saying to one of those guys, it's your net. And neither one of them have really tried to take it. They're playing this kind of cat and mouse game with one another because Georgiev will have one night where he's really, really good and then one night where he's not. And then Shesterkin will come in and play one night where he's really, really good and then he's not. So they got to figure that out. And the defense has just been god-awful. I mean, Jack Johnson was a signing this year. I mean, you ship Mark Stahl out of town. And then you sign Jack Johnson.
And you get another Mark Stahl.
I said when they signed him, right? If we go back to tape, and I said when the Rangers signed Jack Johnson, I said, you just shipped Mark Stahl out of town. Why'd you bring him back? It's the same guy you brought back. And then Brendan Smith, Tony DeAngelo really hasn't found what his worth yet.
0 points also.
Yeah, 0 points. He's -4, I think, at this point. He's been a healthy scratch now twice this season. He hasn't really been there, but Truba really hasn't really been too good this year. Adam Fox was really good. Keandre Miller got his first career NHL goal the other night against Buffalo, so that's a bright spot there. Two young stud defensemen for that blue line is something that they need. Truba really needs to step back up. He's making eight and a half a year, I think. So, I mean, if you're getting paid that much and you're the highest paid defenseman, you got to show it. Yeah. He really hasn't yet. Mika, Panarin, those guys got to score some more goals. Chris Kreider can't be the only young out there scoring goals.
Yeah, so luckily it is early in the season, but with a 56-game schedule, we can get really late,
problem.
really early.
That's the problem.
But I'd say there's still time to recoup. I don't think, if they were getting blown out, 4-1, 5-0 every day.
If it wasn't the division it was, I would say they have time.
Yeah.
But because of how competitive this division is, they have a lot less time.
Yeah.
It is early, right? We're 3 weeks into the season. They're about 8 games in for most of the teams. I think the Rangers are 6. The Bruins are 6 games in. Some of them have 7 and 8 games played. You don't have a ton of time because if Washington keeps the streak that they're going on, the Bruins are going at the rate that they're going on. The Penguins are still really good. The Bruins and the Penguins play again tonight, and what's probably going to be another great game.
And the Bruins don't even have Pasternak yet.
Bruins don't even have Pasternak in their lineup. Tuukka Rask is not playing tonight, so we'll see how that goes. Matt Grzelcyk probably isn't playing either, and Jake DeBrusk is out now. So we'll kind of see what happens with the Bruins here, but they're probably going to be getting Pasternak back earlier than expected. That he's been skating with the team. He just hasn't really gotten his cardio back yet to be fully ready to go. But expect him to be back within the next 10 to 14 days, I think is what they said. So. But that for the Rangers and for the Devils and the Islanders, respectively, also, the Devils have a little bit more wiggle room, only being 2 points out. But for the Rangers, especially, only having 3 points, when everyone else is starting to really go, this division, especially 4 teams coming out, it's going to be hard to find their way in.
Yeah, it's definitely time for them to ramp it up there. So, at least make it exciting because before the stoppage happened, like, they were super exciting, and then now it's just like it seems like they're keeping up with the playoff form that they showed in Carolina, where they didn't really win at all.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, like
against Carolina,
to really hit the point home with the division, with this division as strong as it is, they can't afford to continue at the pace that they're going on, or they're going to be out of it before they even get in it.
Yeah,
and they can try to get hot the last 20 games of the season, but if you lose 10 out of 30, then you're not going to be even close because the other teams in front of you are 5 of the best teams in the conference.
Yeah, and the New York Islanders, I think they are stumbling a little bit. I think Sorokin hasn't really caught on as fast as people were hoping for. And then with the a lot of what we're seeing around the league is there's a good split between the games because it's a condensed schedule, so you can't really ride your goalies. Like, nobody's going to play 50 games.
I think they have 2 good goalies, too, right?
Right.
Sorokin and then Varlamov started out so hot.
Right. Varlamov is he's established as a great goaltender for the Islanders, really, because that's really where he took off when he came in last year. But they're going to go as far as basically Sorokin could go because the Islanders are built on 50-50 kind of goaltending.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting to see how they can develop there. And so we'll move on to the Canadian division, the NHL North. The top team in the league right now, the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Montreal.
The Toronto Maple Leafs have 12
I think
12
they have
points.
another game over Montreal.
Yeah, so 12 points.
Because Montreal hasn't lost in regulation yet. So
Montreal has 10. 10 points, so Toronto has 12.
Toronto's good. We said it from the beginning when we previewed the season. Toronto, on paper, probably has one of the highest stacked lineups offensively in the game. Marner, Matthews are both contributing. They're rolling through. Cody Ceci on the back end. I mean, that team is poised to win, right? And they got 2 good goalies now. Jack Campbell is really starting to play really well. Freddie Anderson's playing as Freddie Anderson probably we're accustomed to seeing.
Yeah.
And he plays good hockey, and that team is playing really good veteran leadership, and Joe Thornton kind of brings those memories of Marlowe back to that team. And they really, I mean, they're firing on all cylinders. They had that game against Calgary the other night that they blew them out of the doors.
One fan perspective that I have about the Toronto Maple Leafs is why does everybody hate the Toronto Maple Leafs? I don't understand. Like you know, you go on the internet and everybody's always bashing the Toronto Maple Leafs. I personally don't get it. Like I'll get it if it comes from like a Montreal or it comes from a Boston. You know, like direct division rivals for decades. But you know, it pretty much comes from everybody. Like everybody hates the Toronto Maple Leafs. I don't understand why. Well, maybe Islander fans because of the whole Tavares thing, but you know, aside from having a good reason to hate them,
You know, it's funny because my first thought was why does everybody hate the Cowboys? Well, and then my other first thought was why does everyone hate the Patriots? Everyone hates the Patriots because they win. Toronto hasn't won since '63.
Yeah, you know.
So that can't be right. But it's probably, I would say, it's probably why does everyone? It's more close to why does everyone love the Cowboys, right? Toronto is arguably the center of the hockey world. It's where the Hall of Fame is. It's hockey town in Canada, right? That's not. They don't call it hockey town. That's Detroit, but it pretty much is, right? And I think that might be why I think the media, they get so much media attention the same way the Cowboys get, and I think that's probably the biggest reason why people dislike Toronto. But it's hard to dislike some of their superstars. Austin Matthews is probably the best American player not named Patrick Kane at this point in time. Mitch Marner's a great young defenseman that looks like he's 12 years old, and he goes out there and skates circles around half the best players in the league. They have a great team, and I think people also hated Mike Babcock, too, and he was a coach there for a little while. I think that contributed to it. People just didn't like him as a coach, didn't like him as a person from some of the stories that have come out. We could spend a whole episode talking about Mike Babcock horror stories, but yeah, I think that's probably the biggest reason.
Yeah, I mean, I personally just don't get it. I mean, I know a lot of people hate the Rangers.
I hate him because I'm a Boston fan.
That's a legitimate reason, though.
Right.
And I think, you know, a lot of the original 6 teams get the hate because they're original 6, and
Right.
you know, like they have the longer history, so they've been in existence longer, so they have the bigger, deeper fan bases. But I just personally don't get it. I mean, as a Ranger fan, like I know a lot of people hate the Rangers even though they haven't won a lot of Stanley Cups. Like they've had a lot of great players come to New York just because they wanted to play in New York, and that's one thing that a lot of people have hated. But
I think
mean,
that's
the
the
Toronto
same
Maple
thing
Leafs
too
just
with
do not
Toronto.
get it.
I think Toronto kind of gets the same rap as the Rangers do, right? People want to come to New York to play. People want to go to Toronto to play, right? It's how John Tavares ended up leaving the island, going up there. There was rumor that Stamkos might have gone there too. There's like they always seem to get thrown into the mix when some of these big names come out that they're going to sign, even though they don't have cap space. They like, oh, he's going to somehow end up in Toronto. And I think that's probably one of the reasons. It's more jealousy than anything else because people want their team covered. And Toronto seems to hog most of that spotlight.
I, for one, if the Toronto Maple Leafs end up winning, because like everybody's a playoff choker until they're not, you know, until they end up actually coming up, like breaking the hurdle, like the Washington Capitals did a couple years ago.
While we're on this division, I'm going to put my hand up.
Mm-hmm.
Ottawa has looked awful to start the season.
Yes,
I picked them as a playoff team. They have bright spots, right? Brady Tkachuk, Stutzel's been really good.
He has come on very strong.
Matt Murray looks pretty good, but they lost 7-1 to Vancouver the other night. It's early in the season, so if they make the playoffs, I'm gonna take that all the way to the bank and say I called it from the beginning. But here we are, 3 weeks into the season. I think they have 1 win to their name too.
Yep.
So you know what? They're in the same boat as the Rangers. So if you have faith in the Rangers, and I still got faith in Ottawa, but hand up, probably shouldn't have picked them as a playoff team. But here we are.
Yeah. So.
But someone else that you picked as a playoff team has not looked good either.
Yeah.
In that division.
Totally. Yeah. Actually, my division winner is not looking very good
right.
right
You
now.
did pick them.
Yeah. So the Vancouver Canucks have 8 points. They're sitting in 4th place right now with a 4-5 record. So. They have not really hit the gas. I think
they started to. I mean, they just beat Ottawa twice. So
their dynamic offense has not struck yet. I think Pedersen had a slow start to the season. JT Miller's not doing the point per game kind of thing. It just like they don't have the same offensive explosion that they've had in the playoffs, and it doesn't like they didn't really lose a lot of from the things that they lost in the offseason, and a lot of it to Calgary, coincidentally enough, but they didn't lose really any power packful offense. Like they lost Tyler Trifoli, but Trifoli he only played like 10 regular season games, and he only played like
He
a
got
handful
traded at the deadline.
of playoff games. Yeah, so it wasn't like he was very impactful in.
I think you'll end up being okay. I don't know that they'll win the division,
Yeah.
but I think you'll end up being okay. I think they'll still make the playoffs. I think it's too far out for that. Pedersen's starting to get hot. JT Miller's got 2 goals in back-to-back games, so they're starting to roll. They really need Braden Holtby to figure it out, unless they're going to give Demko the green light and make Holtby the backup. But I think you're paying Holtby too much money to let him sit on the bench.
I don't know.
And Holtby. I mean, Holtby's a Vezina winner. He's a Stanley Cup trophy winner. He should be good. He's got to figure it out. I think he's got some issues mentally that he's got to deal with. That goes back to his time in Washington last year when he struggled there. So I think you'll be okay in that pick. I don't think they'll win the division, but they'll make the playoffs.
I think there was a reason why they let him walk for a reason. I mean, they got Hank for a bit of a cheaper price, but I think Holtby's just making like $2.5 million. I don't think he's making that much toward the cap of the. I think it was like a bargain signing for the Canucks. I'm not exactly sure, but he's definitely not making top dollar. Like they didn't get him as like.
Oh, they're not paying him $13 million like the Panthers are paying Bobrovsky to sit on the bench.
Nope.
Okay.
Or Jacob Markstrom, who signed it was like
well, Markey deserved that. Markey, I mean, he carried that team until he got hurt, and then you saw what happened. But Demko came in and was stellar, so they're like, oh, we really don't need him. Let's go make a play for Holtby, and then we got Demko to fall back on.
Yeah.
Shout out to Boston College, Thatcher Demko, Boston College product. Boy, he's good. I hope he gets to stay.
I think so. It's only 24 years old, so there's definitely more time there for him. And the Canucks team in general.
The future
to win the
for
division.
USA Hockey coming into the Olympics next year is bright. That's for sure.
Yeah, totally. So then we'll move on to the final division, the West Division, where the Vegas Golden Knights are having no surprise. They are absolutely studly.
My pick to win the division, my pick to win the cup, have come out and blown the doors off of almost everybody that they've played against.
Yeah, they only have one loss on the season. They have 11 points. The St. Louis Blues, champions from two seasons ago, they're second place with 9, and then there's a 4-way tie. The Wild, the Avalanche, the Ducks, and the Kings all have 8 points. So it's still early in the season, but
yeah, that division turned out to be a little more competitive than we probably all would have guessed from the beginning, right? We said that division in our preview show was pretty top-heavy. With the Blues and the Knights, and then you kind of had everybody else, right? So where were they going to fall in the line? The Blues, Colorado, and Vegas, and then everyone else kind of falls in the line. So, it's fun. It's funny to see, but everyone seems to be a little more competitive than we thought. I think the Ducks are starting to figure it out a little bit. I think the Kings' young talent starting to shine through. They've won some games. Johnny Quick's looks back to the way he used to play when he was a little bit younger. So. That division's a lot of fun to watch too out west, but it stinks that those games are at 10 o'clock at night. I can't stay up that late and watch hockey, man. It's like watching those Pac-12 at night games when football starts at 10 o'clock. If I lived in Jersey and I can gamble on everything, then hey, maybe I would stay up and watch. But living in New York and not being able to at least have something riding on the game to think about it, I fall right to bed. But Vegas continues to roll. 2 goalies, like I said. That's 2 great goalies in this league. Great defensemen, great forwards. My pick to win the division, pick to win the cup. They're looking good so far.
And it's an exciting division, too. So pretty much after the games, you want to be able to go to sleep right away.
That's it.
They're just a lot of them are just super barn burners. So we have a little bit of show left this week, and we're going to spend some time with the MLB. So this week they had the Hall of Fame voting selections, and nobody got picked. 0 people, 0 players. There are 263 players in the Hall of Fame after out of the thousands and thousands of players who have come through in and out of the MLB, and 33 total members. And there is no Roger Clemens, no Barry Bonds, no Kurt Schilling,
Sammy Sosa,
no Sammy Sosa,
Martha Skell, Manny Ramirez,
Rafael Palmeiro.
Yeah. All right, look. This is the first time since 2013 this happened. What a black eye for baseball. To not be able to vote anybody into your Hall of Fame and to have 14 writers not submit a ballot. There were 14 blank ballots submitted. Just decided, I'm not going to vote. Then give up your vote, all right? Give it to somebody who's going to use it. Because what is a baseball Hall of Fame? What is any Hall of Fame supposed to do? It's supposed to tell the story of the history of your game. How are you going to tell the history of the game without the person that has the most home runs in baseball? Look, did he get busted for steroids? Is steroids a big problem with a lot of the names that were on this year's Hall of Fame ballot? Yeah. But how many other players that are in the Hall of Fame have done things a lot worse than take some steroids? Probably a few. Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens are two of the best players to ever play baseball. And they deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. Sammy Sosa, another one. Manny, I think he'll get in eventually. He's just not friendly with the media. Same thing with Curt Schilling. Curt Schilling belongs in the Hall of Fame, I think. I'm not saying that just because I'm a Red Sox fan and he had a big deal to do with the '04 World Series, but the '03 or the '04 ALCS with the bloody sock in New York, that's one of the most iconic games in baseball history. And that was Curt Schilling pitching all the way through a 2-hit shutout, pitched 7 innings in that game against the Yankees' stellar lineup at that point to force a Game 7. I mean, that is one of the most iconic games in baseball, and he's not going to be a part of it because of some things he said in his past. Manny's another one, but to keep guys like Bonds, Sosa, and Clemens out is a travesty to me, and I think that those guys deserve to be in the Hall of Fame.
I think I'm going to disagree with you on that one just because in their playing careers and when they directly impacted the games, they basically enhanced themselves with the steroids and things like that, the performance enhancing drugs. It comes to the point where you basically robbed people, like you robbed teams because they gave you all this money. You robbed other people because they won MVPs doing enhancing themselves while other players did not, and they did it the clean way. So basically, you got Barry Bonds winning an MVP over somebody else who didn't. He basically did everything the right way. So that cost that losing player future millions and things like that. So there's a big
But
balance.
that's not the Hall of Fame.
But the Hall of Fame is basically like they don't want these players to have their cake and to eat it too. So
let me ask you
when
a
it comes to
question.
the Hall of Fame, it's like, nah, we're not gonna super reward you for the cheating that you've done in the past. Like they can't, unfortunately, they can't reverse a lot of the things that happen. They can't reverse like MVP awards and things like that. I know Mike Greenwell a couple of years ago was trying to get when the Jose Canseco stuff came out, that he was like, you know, Mike Greenwell, former Red Sox outfielder, well, he was second place in the MVP voting, and then imagine how his like future earnings could have been if he was the MVP instead of just being second and things like that. You know, it set the ripple effect between everybody. But if you let one of them in, then you gotta let all of them in. But then you set the precedence that cheating is okay. And that is
but I don't think that's necessarily what this case is at that point, because there's guys in the Hall of Fame that have been voted in the Hall of Fame that have bad past. And what about all the guys that are in the Hall of Fame before there was integration? Before the league was integrated and you had the Negro League and the regular and MLB, right? What about all those guys? They didn't play against the best talent in the world. They were playing in the Negro League. So what do you at that point? You have a lot of guys like I said, a lot of guys in the Hall of Fame currently that were voted in by writers that probably have a worse past than Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens taking PEDs. And Barry Bonds probably had a Hall of Fame career before all of that stuff when he was still in Pittsburgh. He probably had a Hall of Fame career then. Roger Clemens was probably a Hall of Famer in Boston before he went to New York, then went to New York and had a Hall of Fame career there. Sammy Sosa, probably the same thing, right? But when you have guys that break records, like Hank Aaron, who just died, rest in peace, Hank Aaron,
who many think are the true home run king,
which is fine, but in the record
the natural home run king.
But in the record book, Barry Bonds hit 756 or however many he ended up finishing with, but he hit more than Hank Aaron did. Roger Clemens I think he has the most strikeouts ever, if I'm not mistaken, or most I don't know, whatever, one of them. Sammy Sosa broke Roger Maris's record with Mark McGwire, the two of them. Neither one of them are in the Hall of Fame. Yep. I think at some point, if we're trying to tell the story of baseball, you can't tell the story of baseball without Barry Bonds in it. He's part of that story. Roger Clemens is part of that story. Roger Clemens has won World Series here in New York. He's won multiple Cy Youngs. He's one of the best pitchers ever. You can't tell the story about baseball without him. Same thing with Sammy Sosa. One of the most iconic videos is Sammy Sosa running on the field with the American flag after 9/11. We're just not going to have. We're not going to talk about Sammy Sosa ever in baseball again because he took PEDs. I just think that's tough. Let me ask you this: Major League Baseball did nothing to punish any of the Houston Astros for what they did. All right. Major League Baseball's punished Barry Bonds, punished Sammy Sosa, punished Mark McGwire, punished all those guys that didn't get in, right? They did nothing to punish the Astros. Does Jose Altuve get in to the Hall of Fame? Does George Springer get into the Hall of Fame?
Interesting. Hopefully not.
But that's what I'm saying. So where's the line in the sand? Because you have guys that did a lot worse things that didn't get caught until after they're in the Hall, or they were never punished for what they did. These guys are being punished for what they did. Do I think they're going to end up getting in the Hall of Fame? Probably, but it won't be on their. It won't be from the writers. It'll be from the other committees that the Hall of Fame has. Like Curt Schilling wants his name taken off the ballot, and then I think it's another 5 or 10 years he has to wait for the Veterans Committee to vote him in, and then he'll probably get in. Same thing with Bonds and Sosa and Clemens. Unfortunately,
I think what's going to happen is over the course of time, when a lot of the current like voters and things like that, when they get either too old or unfortunately pass away, when the newer people come in, because even now, like there's talk of there's more talk nowadays, I think, than like 20, 30 years ago with Pete Rose should be allowed to be in the Hall of Fame.
That's the biggest tragedy in baseball, is that Pete Rose is not in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
Especially in 2021 when gambling is legal in 17 states, I believe now at this point, and is about to become legal nationwide, when the guy didn't gamble on his own team. And we talk about the 1918 Chicago Black Sox as the best baseball team ever. They threw the World Series because of gambling. Pete Rose didn't gamble on his own team. Pete Rose is the all-time hits leader in baseball, and he's not in the Hall of Fame. It's the same thing. But then you make the same argument with Barry Bonds. Yeah, Barry Bonds took PEDs, but Barry Bonds has the most home runs in baseball. So, yeah, it's one or the other. But you got to let Pete Rose has to be in the Hall of Fame. There's no question.
You can't penalize or rewrite history for anything that has already happened at this point. And they haven't even tried, because once you do it for one, you got to do it for all of them. Just opens up a big Pandora's box. But keeping them out of the Hall of Fame is just telling them, like, we're not going to continuously reward you for what you've done.
The real interesting thing is going to be next year's ballot, because Alex Rodriguez is going to be on next year's ballot. Alex Rodriguez has his own steroid pass, his own PED pass, but he's in the good graces of writers. He's one of the pretty boy faces of baseball right now in media. So if they vote him in and they don't vote Bonds and Clemens in, then we have a real problem.
But the fact that not going to happen. He's going to go through the same roundabout.
But that's the thing. We have to have consistency. So, it's inexcusable that we had 14 blank ballots. Those people shouldn't have votes. Everyone should have to vote, regardless. On the paper, you are allowed to vote for 10 names total. You don't have to vote for 10 names. You can vote up to 10 names, and you need 75%. Be on 75% of ballots to get in. Curt Schilling was on 71% of ballots. If 14 more people filled out Curt Schilling's name, he'd be in the Hall of Fame.
They felt like a lot of it is keeping the tradition and the prestige of the Hall of Fame. So if they felt like anybody didn't have if they didn't feel enough to vote for somebody, then they might as well have not voted for anybody. Now, should they continue to do that? I don't know. Like there's a lot of things that can happen there, but
and it should be a committee of players, not writers.
It's understandable that the league does not want to continuously reward people that have, basically cheated the game.
Yeah, it should be. I mean, it should be a committee of former players, managers, executives, not writers. Unfortunately, writers are very involved in the game, and there's a lot of good writers. Jet Passon's one of the guys I read all of his stuff when it comes to baseball. And he gave up his vote because he didn't like the way that the MLB Writers Association ran it. So that goes to show one thing right there. But that's pretty much what we got for this week, guys.
All right, so that'll be a conversation for another day.
For next year when they don't vote anybody else in either.
Thank you so much, Harrisburger, for joining us as always.
Thanks, guys.
My name's Alfonso Caldera, and we'll see you next year. LDM,